Well, good morning. It's Alan Hollander here with the morning after for January the 17th, 2014. Where to begin? Lots happening around the world, and we're going to endeavor to cover as much as we can this morning in the brief time that we have together. Of course, you're listening to me on our digital newspaper, which is an interesting concept where you're listening to somebody on radio. But it's in a newspaper, and that's the new digital world. So a lot of these stories are going to be covered a little bit later on here after you listen to me and the rest of the story with Paul Harvey. You can read the rest of the news, which is rather intriguing today. Obviously, front of mind is the visit of Stephen Harper to Israel. We have lots to say about that and our own personal comment as well. At any rate, I wanted to talk about something that's happening right now in China, in Beijing. The 20 or so activists that gathered at one point, if you recall, at an isolated guest house on the outskirts of the capital, leaving their cell phones behind to avoid detection by the police, when China's first leadership change in a decade was fast approaching, and the group saw an opening for a movement to fight injustice and official corruption. Well, that day was in May of 2012. That's when they began to work on a plan to expand the new citizens movement, an ambitious campaign for transparency and fairness that would eventually draw as many as 5,000 supporters, inspire street protests across the country, and provide the first major test to help gauge the new leadership's tolerance for grassroots political activism. They were heartened when China's new leader, some of these hard to pronounce, Xi Jinping, came to power that November, vowing to stamp out corruption, promote judicial fairness, and respect the Constitution, goals which are tantalizingly close to their own. Well, now 14 months later, their ideals have collided with a harsh reality. About 20 people associated with the group have been detained. 3 members have been tried and await judgment. And the rights lawyer who organized the guest house meeting, Zhu Xingyang, was indicted last month for gathering a crowd to disrupt the public order and faces almost certain conviction. The crushing of the new citizens movement is just one stark example of the new leadership's refusal to countenance any stirring of opposition. So, here we have a situation where we have trade relationships with China, all sorts of doing business with China. There are groups going over, business groups, to create. The fact of the matter is that we can't ignore the fact that the Communist Party has used the state news media to denounce perceived ideological threats, sought to rid the internet of politically unwelcome rumors and opinion, and tried to silence rights lawyers and muckraking journalists. Wen Yunchao, a Chinese rights activist studying at Columbia University, estimates that 160 activists have been arrested over the past year, not counting the Tibetans and the Uyghurs detained on separatism-related charges. Think about that every time you walk into Canadian Tire and buy a piece of hardware or something that says "Made in China." Think about that when you go into the Gap or a clothing store, and every label that says "Made in China." Think about that. Anyways, that's one item we were tracking today, and then of course the Senate report that came out about the Benghazi attack. It was called avoidable in a Senate report. This was in Washington. It was a stinging report by the Senate Intelligence Committee released Wednesday, concluded that the attack 16 months ago that killed 4 Americans in Benghazi, Libya, could have been prevented, singling out the State Department for criticism for its failure to bolster security in response to intelligence warnings about a growing security crisis around the city. And the report is broadly consistent with the findings of previous inquiries into the attack on September the 11th, 2012, but it is the first public examination of a breakdown in communications between the State Department and the CIA during the weeks leading up to the deadly episode at the diplomatic compound where J. Christopher Stevens, the American ambassador, died. What impact this is going to have on Hillary Clinton's run for the White House, I doubt it will, because it'll be long forgotten by the time she runs. And like anything else, it'll be kind of swept under the table. But clearly, the buck stopped with Hillary Clinton. Well, in the headlines, also while you were sleeping last night, President Obama has called for the ending, or limits, let's say, on surveillance program. He's ordering the end of spying on friendly leaders. I think a little too late, wouldn't you say? Proposed reforms more sweeping than expected. Well, it's like you got your hand cut in the cookie jar, so now what do? And, he's already, quote unquote, pissed off so many world leaders that it's hard to count them. Mind you, we're no lambs either when it comes to this in Canada. And, the number of people we've pissed off as well in terms of who we've been spying on. Anyways, this morning, President Obama is calling for ending the government's control of phone data from hundreds of millions of Americans and the promises that we will not monitor the communications of heads of state and government of our close friends and allies. The president said Friday he will end the program as it currently exists. He called for extending some privacy protections to foreign citizens whose communications are scooped up by the U.S. Well, amen, and brother, and a big round of applause for Mr. Snowden. I mean, Edward Snowden, by being the whistleblower, much like with Enron, has brought all this to light. How much more is hidden? Thank God for the whistleblowers, and they've listed 10 whistleblowers and the scandals that they spurned. Very, very interesting. Looking back at some of the others, you look at Bradley Manning, Catherine Galliford, 3 Health Canada scientists, Joe Darby, Jeffrey Wiggin, W. Mark Felt, Daniel Ellsberg. I mean, these are people we have to thank. Okay, so all right, let's go down to the next item here that we have showing up. Yeah, well, look, just some sort of going back and forth from the global scene to the local scene. In Edmonton, actually, a barn collapsed and killed several cattle, and it kind of threatens the future of a dairy farm. And it's a sad situation. This happened. The collapse of a barn roof near Rocky Mountain House killed 11 cattle and put the future of a dairy farm at risk. The building owned by the Semmelink family is the 10th active barn to collapse under the weight of heavy snow this winter. Now the family wonders if they can afford to rebuild a business that has lasted 3 generations. It's been a way of life. The way I grew up, it's what I love doing, Devin Semmerling said. For me, I'd probably go look for a job at another dairy, but for Dad, it's a lot tougher to move on, and especially Grandpa. So if you live near Rocky Mountain House, you know these people, you might want to drop by and offer some of your condolences. The collapse occurred actually on Monday morning, 20 minutes after David Semmerling and his 2 sons left the barn. We heard this big crack. I thought it might have been the delivery truck in the yard, so I looked out. He said I didn't see anything, so I was walking to the shop to get a truck out, and I noticed the whole barn was gone. And the cows and calves were trapped inside. So, just kind of scanning local news, global news, regional news, Edmonton as well. This was a really sad situation in New Mexico. A 12-year-old boy, that's right, I'm talking 12 years old, goes in and shoots 2 students in a New Mexico middle school. And he drew his shotgun from a band instrument case. People actually thought he was walking in to participate in a band concert and shot and wounded 2 classmates in his middle school. Tuesday morning, before a teacher talked him into dropping the weapon and he was taken into custody, a boy was critically injured and a girl was in satisfactory condition following the shooting at Berendo Middle School in Roswell. Governor Susana Martinez said the students were in the gym where they typically hang out before classes start during cold and inclement weather. The 12-year-old opened fire with the shotgun there at about 8 a.m. local time. However, he was quickly stopped by one staff member who walked right up to him and asked him to set down the firearm, which he did. Well, we're going to. There's been a lot of talk about the American gun culture, and what can you say? This has been prevalent now since Columbine. It doesn't seem to end, whether it's a school or some guy arguing with some guy in a movie theater about texting, pulls out a gun and shoots him. You can jokingly refer to it as the deadly use of popcorn. I mean, the guy threw popcorn in his face and he shot him. As gun violence increases and pro-gun forces achieve new legislation, the gun control movement in the United States is rapidly unraveling, folks. In the years since Sandy Hook, when you'd think there'd be political and popular will for reasonable new gun regulations, gun sales have actually reached record highs. And AR-15s, the firearm used at Aurora and Sandy Hook, are the trendiest, best-selling weapons in the industry. And now in Florida, it's possible that you can lawfully shoot a man in the chest at point-blank range to defend yourself against the lethal use of popcorn. If not popcorn, definitely Skittles. I mean, this is tongue-in-cheek, but it gets to that point of being ridiculous. The notorious Florida law known as Stand Your Ground is back in the news. This time, it's very likely the statute that will be used in defense of the 71-year-old ex-cop Curtis Reeves, who shot and killed a man, Chad Olson, inside a Tampa movie theater. Olson had been texting his daughter's babysitter during the trailers to mention that he'd be turning off his cell phone during the movie. Reeves was annoyed by the texting, and an argument broke out. No punches were thrown, but Olson tossed a bag of popcorn at Reeves, who responded by brandishing a .380 caliber handgun and shooting Olson and his wife. So Reeves told sheriff deputies after his arrest that he was in fear of being attacked. And Chris Noco, the Pasco County Sheriff, said that Stand Your Ground will surely be used in Reeves' case, though he intends to fight it. While it's true that Florida state law qualifies the popcorn throwing as technically an assault, there's no logical justification whatsoever for lethal force to be used in response to it. But in crazy Florida, the Stand Your Ground law authorizes deadly force if a person reasonably believes he or she is threatened with great bodily harm or death. And it doesn't matter if there's an opportunity to walk away from the fracas. So the next time you're planning a trip to Florida, don't confront that that hotel employee who might be the concierge or something about, hey, you sent me to the wrong restaurant, and throw your room key at him because he could shoot you. I mean, it's just... Okay, that's ridiculous. All right. What else have we got here? Well, Justin Bieber. Okay, oh my goodness. What's happened to Justin Bieber? It's Friday morning. We're slurring our words already, and it's Friday morning. I'll tell you. Justin Bieber is coming apart at the seams. Major meltdown. Detectives of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department found drugs and arrested an associate of singer Justin Bieber during a search of the pop star's home for evidence in an egg-tossing vandalism case. Police noted that Bieber, his security, and the entourage cooperated fully but did not make an official statement. The singer has not been arrested or exonerated in the felony vandalism incident. Lieutenant David Thompson told media at a midday press conference. I get it was done with eggs, which makes you feel it is a lower-level crime, but a felony. So we go from popcorn to eggs, but a felony crime is a felony crime no matter how you commit it. It rose to the felony section, and the judge signed a search warrant to go and get evidence, he said. There's an extensive level of damage. My God, how much damage can you make when you throw eggs at somebody? And the sheriff, we didn't do the search warrant to send a message. That's not what we did. I think the story behind the story is that there are about 7 or 8 of these people in his house, in the house with Justin Bieber, rappers by the name of Lil Zah, whose real name is Xavier Smith. The drug was initially said to be cocaine, but authorities later said they were conducting tests to determine its contents. You know, you become the average of the 5 people you hang around with the most. It's a great quote from Jim Rohn. motivational speaker. So take a look at who the 5 people